Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Guardian, staring out at the endless stars. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the control panels. Captain called Amy Sullivan from her position at the communications desk. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Jake turn around. "We're getting a transmission. It's from the Galactic Council." Jake felt his stomach drop. In the 3 years since humanity had joined the galactic community, direct contact from the Council was rare. Usually it meant trouble. "Put it through," he said, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar blue and silver symbol of the Galactic Council. A voice spoke in perfect English, though Jake could hear the electronic translation underneath. "Captain Morrison of the United Earthship Guardian. You are ordered to report to Admiral Lisa Carter immediately. This message carries the highest priority classification." The screen went dark. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Ryan Brooks, his tactical officer, raised an eyebrow. Amy was already working at her station. "Try to get more information. Set course for Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Best possible speed." The journey to Earth took 2 days. Jake spent most of the time wondering what the Council could want with him. The Guardian was a good ship with a good crew, but they were nothing special by galactic standards. Other species had faster ships, better weapons, and more advanced technology. Admiral Carter was waiting for him in her office at Earth Command. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Jake had served under her for 5 years and had never seen her look this serious. "Sit down, Jake," she said without looking up from her desk. "We need to talk." Jake took a seat and waited. The Admiral finished reading whatever was on her screen, then turned to face him. "The Galactic Council has made a decision that nobody saw coming," she began. "They want to change how security works at Nexus Prime." Nexus Prime was the huge space station where the Council met. It was a center of galactic government, home to representatives from over 200 species. Jake had never been there, but everyone knew about it. "What kind of changes?" he asked. "They're removing all other species from security duty," Admiral Carter said. "From now on, only humans will guard the Council chambers." Jake stared at her. "That can't be right. What about the Corvin Empire? They've been providing security for decades. Or the Zephyrians with their advanced technology." "All removed from duty," the Admiral confirmed. "The Council voted unanimously. They want humans to take over complete responsibility for their protection." "But why us?" Jake asked. "We're the newest members of the Council. Most species still think of us as primitive." Admiral Carter stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the military base. "That's exactly what I asked the Council representative. You know what he told me? He said that after careful study, they determined that humans have something the other species lack." "What's that?" "The ability to put the mission before personal gain. The willingness to protect others, even when it costs us something. And the flexibility to adapt when plans go wrong." Jake thought about this. It sounded like the kind of diplomatic talk that meant nothing. But coming from the Council, it had to mean something important. "There's more," the Admiral continued. "The Corvin ambassador is not happy about this decision. General Krextor made some threats about human incompetence. Several other species are also questioning the Council's judgment. So we're walking into a situation where half the galaxy thinks we don't deserve to be there." Jake said. "Exactly. Which is why I'm sending my best captain and crew." She turned back to face him. "The Guardian will be the lead ship in a small human fleet. You'll report directly to me, but operational decisions will be yours to make." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow. Your crew is already being briefed. Ryan Brooks will remain as your tactical officer, and Amy Sullivan will handle communications. I'm also assigning you some additional personnel." She handed him a data pad with the crew assignments. Jake scanned through the names, recognizing most of them as solid, reliable officers. "Admiral," he said slowly, "what if we fail? What if something happens to the Council members while we're supposed to be protecting them?" Admiral Carter was quiet for a long moment. then humanity's place in the galactic community will be over before it really began. The other species are already looking for reasons to push us out. If we can't handle this responsibility, they'll have the excuse they need. Jake nodded. The stakes were clear. This wasn't just about protecting alien politicians. It was about proving that humans belonged among the stars. There's one more thing, the Admiral said. The Council didn't just choose humans randomly. According to their files, they've been watching us for months. They've seen how we handle conflicts, how we treat other species, how we react under pressure. They believe we have qualities that make us uniquely suited for this job. What qualities? They didn't say exactly. But reading between the lines, I think it comes down to something simple. Other species see protection as a job. Humans see it as a duty. Jake left the meeting with his head spinning. By the time he returned to Guardian, word had spread through the crew. Everyone was talking about their new assignment, their voices mixing excitement with nervousness. Ryan Brooks met him at the airlock. Captain, is it true? Are we really going to be guarding the Galactic Council? It's true, Jake confirmed. And Ryan, this is bigger than just us. This is about all of humanity. Amy Sullivan appeared at Ryan's shoulder. Sir, I've been monitoring galactic communications. The news is spreading fast. Some species are calling it the Council's biggest mistake in centuries. Jake looked at his crew. These people would serve with him through dangerous missions and quiet patrols. They were good people, brave and honest. But were they ready for this? Listen up, everyone, he called out, and conversation stopped. Tomorrow we leave for Nexus Prime. We're going to be the first humans to guard the Galactic Council. I won't lie to you. A lot of species think we can't do this job. They think we're too young, too primitive, too human. He paused, looking at each face around him. Let's prove them wrong. The first thing Jake Morrison noticed about Nexus Prime was how massive it was. The space station stretched out in all directions, a city-sized structure that seemed to go on forever. Ships from dozens of different species move around it like insects around a flower. My God, whispered Amy Sullivan from her position at communications. I've seen the pictures, but this is incredible. Jake had to agree. The Guardian felt tiny as they approached the docking bays. Other human ships followed behind them. The Defender, the Vigilant, and the Protector. Together, they made up humanity's first security fleet for the Galactic Council. Captain, Ryan Brooks called for the station. We're being hailed by Station Control. They're directing us to Docking Bay 94. Take us in, Jake ordered. Nice and easy. The docking process took an hour. The station systems were different from anything humans used, and the controllers spoke several languages that the translation system struggled with. But eventually, the Guardian settled into its assigned berth with a soft thump. All ships report successful docking, Amy announced. Station Control is requesting that senior officers report to Security Level 7 for briefing. Jake straightened his dress uniform and checked his appearance in a mirror. This was it, the moment when humanity would officially take over security for the most important place in the galaxy. Commander Alex Turner was waiting for him in the corridor outside the docking bay. Turner was a tough, experienced officer who had volunteered to lead the ground security teams. With him was Dr. Helen Parker, a scientist who specialized in alien technology and security systems. Ready for this, Captain? Turner asked. As ready as we can be, Jake replied. Any word on how the other species are taking our arrival? Dr. Parker consulted her data pad. Mixed reactions. The Ethereal seemed genuinely pleased. The Zephyrians are maintaining diplomatic silence. The Corvins. She paused. Let's just say General Krextor has been very vocal about his opinions. They made their way through the station's corridors. Nexus Prime was like a small city, with different sections designed for different species. The air was kept at a comfortable temperature for most races, though Jake noticed it was a bit warm for human comfort. Aliens stopped to stare as they passed. Some looked curious, others seemed suspicious. A few appeared openly hostile. Jake tried to keep his expression neutral and professional. Security Level 7 turned out to be a large conference room with a curved wall that showed a view of space outside the station. Waiting for them was the strangest being Jake had ever seen. The ethereal stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Her limbs were long and graceful, and her eyes were large and silver. She wore flowing robes that moved like water, and when she spoke, her voice had a musical quality. "Welcome, humans," she said, inclining her head in what Jake assumed was a greeting. "I am Council Speaker HFY Story. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for accepting this responsibility." Jake stepped forward and gave a formal bow. "Thank you, Speaker HFY Story. We're honored by the Council's trust. Please be seated." The ethereal gestured to chairs that had been arranged around a large table. "We have much to discuss." As they sat down, Jake noticed they weren't alone. Several other beings sat around the table, representatives from different council species, he assumed. But one figure immediately caught his attention. General Krextor of the Corvin Empire was everything Jake had expected and worse. Nearly 7 feet tall and covered in dark scales, the Corvin looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares. His eyes were yellow and cold, and when he looked at the humans, his expression showed nothing but contempt. "So these are the primitives who think they can protect the Council," Krextor said, his voice a low growl. "I have commanded security forces for 30 years. My warriors have defended this station through 12 major conflicts. And now you replace us with this?" Speaker HFY Story raised one elegant hand. "General Krextor, the Council's decision has been made. Your objections have been noted and considered." "My objections?" The Corvin general stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over the table. "These humans have been in space for less than 50 years. They know nothing of galactic politics, nothing of the threats that face the Council. How can they possibly—" "Sit down, General." Sir's voice carried quiet authority. "You forget yourself." Krextor remained standing for a long moment, his yellow eyes fixed on Jake. Finally, he sat back down, but his hostility filled the room like smoke. "Perhaps," said another voice, "we should focus on practical matters." This came from a Zephyrian, one of the blue-skinned beings known for their advanced technology. "The humans will need time to familiarize themselves with our security protocols." Dr. Parker leaned forward. "Actually, we'd like to review all current procedures. We believe fresh perspectives might reveal vulnerabilities that have been overlooked." The Zephyrian's large dark eyes blinked slowly. "You wish to change systems that have protected the Council for centuries?" "We wish to improve them," Commander Turner said calmly. "That's what good security does. It adapts and evolves." General Krextor made a sound that might have been laughter, but it held no humor. "Arrogant as well as ignorant. You humans think you know better than species who have been civilized since before your world had cities." Jake felt his temper rise, but kept his voice level. "General, we're not here to prove we're better than anyone. We're here to do a job, and we'll do it to the best of our ability." Speaker HFY Story stood gracefully. "Perhaps a tour of the facilities would be helpful. Commander Turner, Dr. Parker, if you would accompany me, I will show you the security arrangements." As they walked through the station's security levels, Jake began to understand the massive scope of their responsibility. Nexus Prime housed not just the council chambers, but living quarters for hundreds of diplomats, staff areas, commercial districts, and industrial sections. The security systems were incredibly complex, involving multiple layers of sensors, barriers, and checkpoints. The previous security force numbered over 3,000. Speaker HFY Story explained as they stood in the main security control room. "Your human contingent is considerably smaller. Quality over quantity," Commander Turner observed, studying the banks of monitors and control stations. "We prefer small, flexible teams that can respond quickly to changing situations." Dr. Parker was examining a holographic display of the station's layout. "Speaker, if I may ask, why did the Council really choose humans for this role? The official reasons seem incomplete." The ethereal paused for a long moment, her silver eyes reflecting the lights of the control room. "Dr. Parker, in our observations of human behavior, we have noticed something unique. Other species, when given power, tend to use it for their own benefit. Humans, despite your reputation for violence, seem to have a different relationship with power." "How so?" Jake asked. "You see it as a burden rather than a privilege. When a human is given responsibility for protecting others, they take it personally. They do not simply follow orders. They care about the outcome. General Krextor, who had been following the group in sullen silence, spoke up. Caring is not enough when facing real threats. When assassins come, when terrorists attack, when armies invade, when you're carrying stop plasma rifles. Jake turned to face the Corvin general. No, General, but it will make sure we never give up trying. Speaker HFY Sarah nodded slowly. That, Captain Morrison, is precisely what the Council hopes to find in human guardians. As they completed the tour and returned to their ships, Jake felt the weight of expectations settling on his shoulders. The station was vast, the threats were unknown, and half the galaxy thought they were going to fail. But looking at his crew, at the determination in their eyes, Jake felt something else too. They were ready for this challenge. They might not have the most advanced technology or the longest military tradition, but they had something that mattered more. They cared about doing the job right. Lieutenant Ben Hayes was making his morning rounds when the alarm started screaming. He was in Section 12 of the residential quarter, checking security checkpoints, when red lights began flashing throughout the corridor. All security teams to alert status, came Nicole Grant's voice over the comm system. Grant was a human security chief, a former military police officer who had volunteered for the assignment. We have multiple sensor anomalies in the council chambers area. Ben grabbed his comm unit. Hayes here. I'm moving to the council section now. Negative, Lieutenant. Hold your position. We're getting strange readings throughout the station. Ben paused, his hand on his weapon. In the 3 weeks since humans had taken over security, they had dealt with minor incidents, diplomatic disputes, technical malfunctions, the occasional drunk ambassador. But nothing like this. The corridor around him seemed normal. Alien diplomats and staff members were going about their business, though some were looking around nervously at the alarms. Then Ben saw something that made his blood freeze. A section of empty air shimmered for just a moment, like heat rising from hot pavement. It was barely visible, but Ben had been trained to notice details. Something was there, something that didn't want to be seen. Control, this is Hayes, he whispered into his comm. I think I have visual contact with an intruder in Section 12. Some kind of cloaking technology. Are you certain? Grant's voice was sharp. No, but I'm not taking chances. Ben started following the shimmer, staying back far enough that he wouldn't be noticed. The shape was human-sized, moving carefully through the corridor. In the main security center, Nicole Grant was coordinating response teams while studying sensor readings that made no sense. Major Tony Ross, the tactical officer, stood beside her reviewing the data. This is impossible, Ross muttered. We're getting energy signatures from 6 different species cloaking systems, all at the same time. Maybe they're working together, Grant suggested. No, that's just it. These technologies don't work together. They interfere with each other. No one should be able to combine them like this. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the comm from the Guardian. Security Chief Grant, what's your status? Unknown contacts throughout the station, sir. They're using some kind of advanced cloaking that our sensors can barely detect. How many? We think at least a dozen, maybe more. They seem to be converging on the council chambers. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was it. The first real test of human security. I'm sending additional teams from the ship. Do whatever you need to do to protect the council members. In Section 12, Ben Hayes was still following his target when the shimmering figure suddenly stopped. For a heart-stopping moment, Ben thought he had been detected. Then he realized the intruder was listening to something, probably communications from his team. The figure started moving faster, heading directly toward the council area. Ben keyed his comm unit. This is Hayes. My target is moving toward the council chambers. I'm in pursuit. Ben, wait for backup, Nicole Grant ordered. No time. He's moving too fast. Ben broke into a run, no longer trying to hide. The cloaked figure must have heard him, because the shimmer suddenly broke into a sprint. Other alarms began going off as more intruders were detected throughout the station. The chase led through 3 different sections of the station. Ben's target was fast, but humans had one advantage: endurance. While most alien species were built for short bursts of speed or strength, humans could keep going for hours. By the time they reached the outer perimeter of the council area, Ben was gaining on his target. The security checkpoints here were staffed by human guards who had been alerted to the situation. When they saw Ben running toward them, weapons drawn, they immediately took defensive positions. "Cloaked intruder!" Right in front of me, Ben shouted as he approached. "Open fire on my mark." The human guards couldn't see the target, but they trusted their teammate. When Ben pointed and yelled, "Now!" they opened fire at empty air. The plasma bolt struck something invisible, and suddenly the air filled with sparks and crackling energy. The cloaking system overloaded, revealing a figure in advanced combat armor, carrying weapons from 3 different species. "Target down," Ben reported, breathing hard. But there are more. Throughout the station, similar scenes were playing out. Human security teams were tracking intruders that their sensors could barely detect, relying on instinct and teamwork rather than technology. In the main council chamber, Major Ross had positioned guards at every entrance while evacuation procedures began. The attackers, it turned out, called themselves the Void Seekers. They were extremists from multiple species who wanted to destroy the current galactic order. Their plan was simple: assassinate key council members and blame the humans for the security failure. But they had underestimated human adaptability. "They're using technology from 6 different species," Dr. Parker reported from her analysis station. "Corvin energy shields, Zephyrian cloaking, ethereal sensors, and others. It should be impossible to make them work together." "But it does work," Grant observed, "which means someone with access to all these technologies put this together." The battle lasted 2 hours. The Void Seekers were well-equipped and well-trained, but they had planned for alien security forces that would follow rigid protocols. Human guards are the unexpected. They improvised, adapted, and took risks that alien commanders would never approve. When it was over, 11 intruders were captured and 3 were dead. No council members were harmed, though several sections of the station had been damaged in the fighting. General Krextor arrived in the security center just as the all-clear was being given. He looked around to human officers, their uniforms torn and faces dirty from the fight, and his expression was unreadable. "Your people fought well," he said finally. It sounded like the words cost him something to say. "Thank you, General," Grant replied. But this was just the beginning. Someone organized this attack, someone with access to multiple species' best technology. "You think this was an inside job?" Captain Morrison had arrived from the Guardian and was reviewing the tactical reports. "Has to be," Major Ross said. "The Void Seekers knew exactly where our sense of blind spots were, exactly which routes would let them avoid detection. Someone gave them detailed information about our security setup." Speaker HFY appeared in the doorway, her robe somehow still perfect despite the chaos of the evacuation. "Captain Morrison, on behalf of the Council, I want to thank your people for their service today." Jake nodded. "We were just doing our job, Speaker." "No," the ethereal said quietly. "You did more than that. When my security advisors analyzed the attack plan, they calculated that any conventional security force would have lost at least 12 council members. Your people saved lives through methods that no computer model could have predicted. Lieutenant Hayes is armed in a medical brace, but otherwise unharmed, looked confused. What methods? We just did what seemed right. Exactly, Speaker HFY replied. Other species train their guards to follow procedures. When the procedures fail, they are lost. Human guards seem to have an instinct for protection that goes beyond training. General Krextor was studying the tactical displays, his yellow eyes moving over the battle reports. Your Lieutenant Hayes, he said slowly. Why did he pursue a target he could barely see instead of waiting for support? Ben shifted uncomfortably under the Corvin's stare. Sir, he was heading for the council chambers. I couldn't let him get there. Even though you were outnumbered and outgunned? Yes, sir. Krextor nodded slowly. In my military, such action would be called either foolishness or heroism. The difference is usually determined by the outcome. In the human military, Jake said, we call it doing your job. As the reports were filed and the damage assessed, word of the human security force's success spread throughout Nexus Prime. The species that questioned the Council's choice began to reconsider their opinions. But in the security center, the humans were already planning for the next attack. Because if today had taught them anything, it was that someone with power and resources wanted the current system to fail. And they were willing to kill to make it happen. 3 weeks after the Void Seeker attack, Captain Morrison was beginning to think they had found their rhythm. The human security teams had settled into their routines, and the daily business of protecting the Galactic Council was becoming almost normal. That changed when Ambassador Vexhai came running into the security center at 3 a.m, his blue Zephyrian skin even paler than usual. "My daughter," he gasped, speaking through the universal translator. "She's missing. Kyla is gone." Intelligence Officer Kate Miller was on night duty and immediately stood up from her station. "Ambassador, when did you last see her?" "At dinner. She went to bed in our quarters 2 hours ago. I checked on her before I went to sleep, and she was gone." The window was open. Jake arrived within minutes, still pulling on his uniform. Behind him came engineer Frank Collins, a steady man who specialized in the station's technical systems. "Frank, check the internal sensors," Jake ordered. "Kate, give me everything we know about the ambassador's daughter." Kate's fingers flew over a console. "Kyla Vexhai, age 14 by Zephyrian standards. That's about 12 in human years. She's been living on the station for 6 months, while her father serves his diplomatic term. Any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt the ambassador through his family?" Jake asked. Ambassador Vexhai shook his head. "I am not an important figure. I handle trade disputes, nothing that would make enemies." Frank Collins looked up from his technical station, his expression grim. "Captain, the internal sensors show she left the residential area about an hour ago, but then the trail goes cold. Whoever took her knew how to avoid our detection systems." Jake felt a familiar tightness in his stomach. This was starting to sound like another professional job, possibly connected to the Void Seekers. "Sir," Kate said quietly, "the Zephyrian security protocol says that after 2 hours with no leads, missing person cases are transferred to local authorities for processing." "Local authorities?" Jake asked. "Station administration. They'll file a report and investigate when they have time. Current case backlog is about 3 weeks. Ambassador Vexhai made a sound of despair. 3 weeks? My daughter could be anywhere in the galaxy by then." Jake looked at the Zephyrian father, seeing the fear and hope warring in his large dark eyes. By the book, this wasn't a council security matter. By protocol, they should transfer the case and focus on their primary mission. "Frank, wake up Sergeant Lewis," Jake ordered. "Tell him to bring a full search team. Kate, I want a complete analysis of everyone who entered or left the station in the last 4 hours." "Sir," Kate said carefully, "this might not be a security matter. The girl could have just wandered off. Then we'll find her quickly, and everyone can get back to sleep," Jake replied. "But we're not abandoning a child on bureaucratic technicalities." Sergeant Paul Lewis arrived with 3 other guards, all looking alert despite being woken up in the middle of the night. Lewis was a former police detective who had volunteered for the council assignment specifically because he wanted to help people. "What do we know?" Lewis asked, reviewing the preliminary data. 14-year-old Zephyrian girl, missing from family quarters for about 2 hours. Father says she was in bed, but sensors show her leaving the residential area. Jake summarized. Lewis nodded. Could be a runaway situation. Different species handle adolescence differently. What do we know about Zephyrian child psychology? Kate pulled up cultural files. Zephyrian teenagers are actually more compliant than human ones. They rarely rebel against family authority, but they are naturally curious and have excellent memory for technical details. So if she did leave voluntarily, she had a specific reason, and she'd remember exactly how she did it. Lewis concluded. Let's start with the basics. Who would a lonely kid on a space station go to see? The search that followed was unlike anything the other species had ever seen from a security force. Instead of focusing on security threats or following rigid protocols, the human teams approached it like a family emergency. Lewis split his people into pairs and sent them to different areas of the station. But instead of just checking obvious hiding places, They talked to maintenance workers, late shift cafe employees, and anyone else who might have noticed a young Zephyrian girl wandering around. Frank Collins uses engineering access to check systems the girl might have been curious about. Power generators, water recycling plants, the massive computer cores that ran station operations. Engineer thinking, he called it. Kate Miller analyzed not just security footage, but also studied Zephyrian cultural patterns. Where would a homesick child go? What would remind her of her home world? At 6 a.m, Lewis found her. She was in a hydroponics bay, asleep among plants that had been imported from dozens of different worlds. Specifically, she was curled up next to a small grove of silver-leaf trees that looked remarkably like those shown in Zephyrian artwork. "Miss Kyla?" Lewis said gently, not wanting to startle her. The girl woke up and immediately began crying. In halting Galactic standard, she explained that she was homesick, and the trees reminded her of her family's garden. She had learned the access codes by watching maintenance workers, but had gotten lost trying to find her way back to her quarters. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Lewis knelt down to her level. "You're not in trouble, kid. Your dad is worried about you. That's all. Let's get you home." The reunion in the ambassador's quarters was emotional. Vexhai embraced his daughter while thanking the human guards in 3 different languages. But it was what happened next that surprised everyone. "Sergeant Lewis," Ambassador Vexhai said formally, "I must ask, why did your people spend so much effort on this? Your duties are to protect the council, not to find lost children." Lewis looked confused by the question. "Sir, she's a kid who was scared and lost. Of course we were going to find her, but protocols state." "Protocols are important," Jake interrupted, having arrived just in time to witness the reunion. "But people matter more than protocols." Word of the search spread quickly through the diplomatic community. The humans had dropped everything to find one missing child, treating it as seriously as they would a direct threat to the council itself. Dr. Helen Parker was in the science section later that day when a Corvin engineer approached her. "Dr. Parker, I heard about the Zephyrian child. Is it true that your security forces searched for 6 hours?" "Yes," Helen replied, not understanding why this was remarkable. "The previous security force," the Corvin said slowly, "would have filed a report and moved on. They would say it was not their responsibility." "Well, it should have been someone's responsibility," Helen said simply. That afternoon, Jake received an unexpected visitor. General Krexthor appeared in the security center, but for once he didn't look angry or contemptuous. "Captain Morrison, I came to discuss the missing child incident." "Is there a problem, General?" Jake asked carefully. "No problem, but I am confused by your people's response. The girl was not a council member. Her father is a minor trade official. There was no political significance to the situation." Jake studied the massive Corvin general. "General, do you have children?" Krexthor's yellow eyes flickered. "I have offspring, yes." "Then you understand. When a child is in danger, politics don't matter." The general was quiet for a long moment. "In Corvin society, we protect our own first. Others are secondary concerns. That's the difference between us, then." Jake said, "Humans have a hard time seeing any child as other people's problem." Later that evening, Speaker THY Cicera requested a private meeting with Jake. They met in her personal office, a graceful space filled with art from dozens of different worlds. "Captain Morrison, today's events have been most instructive," the ethereal said, settling into a chair that seemed to flow like liquid. "The search for the ambassador's daughter?" Jake asked. "Yes. My staff analyzed your team's response and found it unique. Other security forces focus on threats to important individuals. Your people seem to see every person on the station as important." Jake considered this. "I suppose that's true. We don't really think in terms of more important or less important when it comes to people being in danger. That perspective troubles some council members," THY Cicera admitted. "They worry that focusing on minor incidents will distract from major threats. Do you share that concern?" The speaker's silver eyes seemed to glow softly. "Captain, in my many years of observing different species, I have learned something important. Those who will sacrifice others for efficiency will eventually sacrifice anyone for convenience. Your people's inability to see individuals as expendable may be their greatest strength. As Jake returned to his quarters that night, he found a message waiting for him from Admiral Carter back on Earth. The text was brief. Heard about the search. Well done. This is exactly why the Council chose us. Jake smiled and deleted the message. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of human capability and character. But today had proved something important, not just to the alien species watching them, but to themselves. They weren't just guards following orders. They were protectors in the truest sense of the word. Dr. Helen Parker had always been good with patterns. It was what made her an excellent scientist and security analyst. So when she started noticing connections between seemingly random incidents over the past month, she knew she was on to something important. She was working late in her lab, surrounded by data screens and technical reports, when Intelligence Officer Danny Shaw knocked on her door. Dr. Parker, sorry to bother you, but I wanted to follow up on that data you requested about station access logs. Danny was young for his position, but he had a sharp mind for details that others missed. Captain Morrison had specifically requested him for the Council assignment. Come in, Danny. I think you're going to find this interesting. Helen gestured to the holographic display floating over her desk. I've been analyzing every security incident since we arrived, including the Void Seeker attack and several smaller events. The display showed a three-dimensional map of Nexus Prime with various incidents marked in different colors. Red for the terrorist attack, yellow for technical malfunctions, blue for minor security breaches. At first, these all looked unrelated, Helen continued. Random technical failures, small security lapses, the kind of things that happen on any large station. But when I started looking at the timing and locations, she manipulated the display, and the scattered incidents suddenly formed a pattern. Lines appeared connecting the events, showing how each one had provided information about different aspects of the station's security. Someone has been probing our defenses, Danny said, understanding immediately. Each incident tested a different system. Exactly. The power failure in Section 15 tested our emergency response times. The communications glitch in the diplomatic quarter checked how quickly we could coordinate between teams. Even that false alarm last week in the docking bays was testing how we handle evacuation procedures. Danny pulled up a chair and studied the data more closely. This level of coordination would require inside knowledge. Someone who understands both our procedures and the station's technical systems. Helen nodded grimly. And someone with access to multiple species technology. Remember, the Void Seekers use equipment from 6 different races. That's not something you can buy on the black market. Have you told Captain Morrison about this? Not yet. I want to be sure before I raise alarms. But Danny, I think we're looking at something much bigger than terrorist attacks or random security breaches. She called up another display, this one showing personnel files and access records. I've been studying the previous security arrangements, before humans took over. Do you know why the Council really replaced the other species? Danny shook his head. The official reason was they wanted a neutral party with no existing galactic alliances. That's part of it. But look at this. Helen highlighted several files. Over the past 2 years, there were 17 major security incidents under the previous system. Each time, the response was either delayed or completely ineffective. Incompetence, Danny suggested. That's what I thought at first. But the pattern is too consistent. It's almost like someone was deliberately sabotaging the security responses. Danny leaned back in his chair, processing the implications. You're saying the previous security forces were compromised. I'm saying someone has been planning this for a long time. The Council didn't choose humans because we're naturally gifted protectors. They chose us because we're the only ones they can trust. The next morning, Helen and Danny presented their findings to Captain Morrison and the senior staff. The briefing room fell silent as they outlined the evidence. So the Void Seeker attack wasn't an isolated incident. Major Ross said slowly. It was part of a larger plan. A plan that's been in motion for at least 2 years, Helen confirmed. Someone has been systematically undermining Council security, gathering intelligence and preparing for something big. Commander Turner studied the data displays. Any idea who's behind it? That's where it gets complicated, Danny said. The evidence points to cooperation between multiple species. Corvin military tactics, Zephyrian technology, ethereal sensor systems, and others. No single race could organize something this complex. Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. You're talking about conspiracy involving multiple council species. Not entire species, Helen clarified, but factions within each race. Military commanders who want more power, tech corporations that profit from instability, political groups that oppose the current galactic order. Security Chief Grant looked up from her tactical analysis. If you're right, then we're not just dealing with external threats. There are enemies inside the council itself, which explains why they needed humans. Jake realized, we don't have existing relationships with any of these factions. We can't be bought, blackmailed, or manipulated through old alliances. Danny pulled up another set of files. There's more. I've been tracking communication patterns, and there's been a lot of encrypted traffic between certain council members and off-station contacts. Traffic that increased dramatically after the Void Seeker attack failed. They're accelerating their timeline, Helen said. Whatever they're planning, our success against the terrorists has forced them to move faster. Jake stood up and walked to the window that showed the vast council chambers beyond. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species went about their daily business, unaware that some of their colleagues might be planning their destruction. Do we have any idea what the endgame is? He asked. Based on the pattern of intelligence gathering, I think they want to stage a major attack that completely destroys the current council structure, Helen replied. Something so devastating that the surviving species will accept authoritarian rule as the only alternative to chaos. Major Ross was studying tactical projections. The good news is that we've identified the threat. The bad news is that we don't know who specifically is involved or when they plan to act. And we can't exactly arrest council members based on suspicious communication patterns, Commander Turner added. Jake turned back to his team. Then we do what we've been doing. We protect the council, we stay alert, and we adapt to whatever they throw at us. Sir, Danny said hesitantly, there's one more thing. Some of the encrypted communications mention a specific date, the Harmony Festival next month. The Harmony Festival was the biggest event on the galactic calendar, when representatives from every council species gathered for a week-long celebration of peace and cooperation. It would be the perfect target for anyone wanting to strike at the heart of galactic civilization. That's when they'll make their move, Jake said with certainty. During the festival, when every important leader in the galaxy is gathered in one place. Helen nodded. It makes perfect sense. Maximum casualties, maximum psychological impact, and the chaos will be blamed on security failures. Specifically, human security failures. Then we have 4 weeks to prepare, Jake decided. Danny, I want continuous monitoring of all suspicious communications. Helen, keep analyzing the technical data. If they're planning something big, they'll need specialized equipment. Nicole, start wargaming different attack scenarios. As the meeting broke up and his staff dispersed to their tasks, Jake remained at the window, looking out at the council chambers. Somewhere among those beings conducting peaceful diplomatic business were traitors planning mass murder. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated what humans were capable of when protecting those under their care. The conspiracy had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. Now they would discover what happened when an unstoppable plan met an immovable human determination to defend the innocent. The real battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin. The first sign of trouble came at dawn on the 3rd day of the Harmony Festival. Commander Alex Turner was conducting his morning security briefing when every alarm on Nexus Prime began screaming at once. Multiple contacts approaching the station, reported Lieutenant Amy Sullivan from the Communications Center. Corvin military vessels moving in attack formation. Captain Morrison rushed to the main command center, still fastening his uniform. Around him, human security teams were scrambling to battle stations while confused alien diplomats demanded explanations in a dozen languages. How many ships? Jake asked, studying the tactical displays. 37 Corvin warships, plus support vessels, Major Ross replied grimly. It's a full invasion fleet. On the main screen, General Krexthor's scarred face appeared. But this wasn't the diplomatic general who had questioned human competence. This was a military commander preparing for war. Nexus Prime, Krexthor announced, his voice carrying across all communication channels. By order of the Corvin Military Council, this station is now under our protection. The corrupt Galactic Council has failed in its duty to maintain order. We are here to restore proper authority. That's treason, Jake said quietly, but his words were heard throughout the command center. Sir, Danny Shaw called from his intelligence station. I'm detecting massive electronic warfare attacks on our systems. Someone is trying to take down our sensors and communications. Zephyrian cyber warfare techniques, Dr. Parker confirmed, her fingers flying over her analysis console. The technology signatures match what we identified in our investigation. Jake felt pieces clicking into place. The conspiracy they had uncovered wasn't just planning an attack. It was happening right now. All human teams, this is Morrison, he announced over the secure comm channel. We are under attack by hostile forces. Primary mission is protection of council members. Secondary mission is station defense. Remember your training and trust your teammates. Outside the station, Corvin warships were taking positions around the massive structure, while smaller ships moved toward the docking bays. But Jake's attention was focused on the internal sensors, which were showing impossible readings. We've got movement inside the station, Security Chief Grant reported. Multiple contacts in sections that should be empty. More cloaked infiltrators? Turner asked. No, these are showing up on sensors. It's like they want us to see them. Jake studied the tactical display, his mind racing. It's a diversion. They want us to focus on the obvious threats while the real attack comes from somewhere else. That somewhere else became clear when Sergeant Kevin Adams reported from the lower levels. Captain, we've got a problem in the industrial section. Someone has taken control of the main power generators. Can we regain control? Jake asked. Not remotely. They physically modified the systems. And, sir, they're threatening to overload the reactors. The implications were staggering. If the power generators exploded, they would take most of Nexus Prime with them, killing thousands of council members and staff. That's their real plan, Jake realized. The fleet outside is just to keep us busy while they destroy the station from within. Dr. Parker looked up from her analysis station, her face pale. Captain, if they overload the main reactors, the explosion will be visible from 3 star systems. Every species in the galaxy will know that human security failed catastrophically. And in the chaos that follows, the military factions can seize control. Jake finished. Turner, take a team to the power generators. Ross, coordinate defense against external attack. Grant, I want every council member moved to the secure areas. As his commanders dispersed to their tasks, Jake opened a channel to all human personnel on the station. All teams, listen carefully. We are facing a coordinated attack designed to destroy the Galactic Council and blame us for the failure. Some of you signed up for routine security duty. Others volunteered for adventure. None of you expected to be fighting for the future of galactic civilization. But that's exactly what we're doing right now. He paused, looking around the faces of his people, young and old, experienced veterans and recent recruits, all of them far from home and facing impossible odds. The enemy has better weapons, more ships, and allies inside the council itself. They've been planning this for years, while we've had weeks to prepare. By every logical calculation, we should lose. Security Specialist Laura Hughes was coordinating evacuation procedures when she looked up. But, sir, they made one critical error. Jake continued. They forgot that humans don't fight because we expect to win. We fight because it's the right thing to do. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Corvin warships hammered the station's external shields, while Zephyrian hackers attacked the computer systems. Inside the station, armed infiltrators engaged human security teams in running firefights through corridors filled with panicking civilians. In the power generation complex, Commander Turner's team found themselves facing enemies equipped with the best military technology from a dozen species. The infiltrators had barricaded themselves in the reactor control room and were systematically overriding safety systems. "We can't get through their defenses." Turner reported over the comm. "They've got energy shields and heavy weapons." "And Captain, they're not trying to escape. This is a suicide mission." Jake felt cold realization wash over him. "They don't care if they die, as long as they take the station with them." "Sir," Laura Hughes called from her evacuation post, "we're getting reports of fighting in the council chambers. Some of the alien security personnel are turning against the others." "It's starting to fall apart," Major Ross observed. "The conspiracy is revealing itself, but that means we're running out of time." Jake made a decision that went against every tactical manual ever written. All teams, new orders. Stop trying to preserve the station systems. I want controlled demolitions to seal off compromised sections. If we can't save everything, we save what matters most. "Sir, that could trap thousands of civilians," Grant protested. "Better trapped than dead." "Do it." What followed was a desperate race against time. Human teams use their own explosives to collapse corridors and seal off sections where the enemy had gained control. They abandoned entire areas of the station to focus on protecting the council chambers and the main civilian areas. Sergeant Adams led a suicide charge into the power complex, not to capture it, but to manually shut down the reactors before they could explode. Half his team didn't make it out, but they succeeded in preventing a catastrophic detonation. Meanwhile, the Corvin fleet outside found themselves facing unexpected resistance. Other species ships began arriving, not to attack the station, but to defend it. "Captain," Amy Sullivan announced with amazement in her voice, "we're receiving support from ethereal, Aquarian, and crystalline fleets. They're engaging the Corvin ships." Jake felt a surge of hope. The conspiracy is collapsing. The loyal species are choosing sides. But even as allied ships joined the battle outside, the situation inside the station remained desperate. Corridors were filled with smoke and debris. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows, and the sounds of fighting echoed to the massive structure. In the secure areas where council members had been evacuated, beings from dozens of species huddled together while human guards stood watch. Many of these aliens had initially questioned humanity's fitness for this role. Now they saw humans dying to protect them, and their doubts were replaced by something approaching awe. Captain Morrison, Speaker Tiagasser, approached Jake in the main command center, her usual elegant composure replaced by grim determination. "My people are safe because of your sacrifice. How can the council ever repay this debt?" Jake looked around at his battered command center, at the displays showing damage systems and casualty reports, at his exhausted team still fighting to coordinate the defense. "Just remember what happened here," he said quietly. "Remember that when everything fell apart, humans kept fighting. The siege was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. What had begun as an attack on the Galactic Council had become a test of human character, and they were passing that test with their blood. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murphy had never expected to die defending aliens on a space station millions of miles from Earth. But as he crouched behind an overturned desk in the main council chamber, plasma bolts searing the air above his head, he couldn't think of a better cause to die for. "Murphy, report." Captain Morrison's voice crackled through his comm unit, barely audible over the sound of weapons fire. "Council chamber is secure for now, sir," Murphy replied, ducking as another energy blast struck the wall behind him. "But we've got hostiles trying to break through the main entrance, and our ammunition is running low." Around him, a handful of human guards maintained defensive positions, while behind them, nearly 200 council members from dozens of species huddled in whatever shelter they could find. These were the most important leaders in galactic civilization, and all that stood between them and death were 12 humans with standard weapons. "How long can you hold?" Morrison asked. Murphy looked at his remaining ammunition, counted his people, and calculated the enemy forces they'd identified. "Maybe 20 minutes, sir. 30 if we're lucky." "Understood. Help is coming." Murphy hoped that was true, but he had stopped counting on rescue hours ago. The station was falling apart around them. Entire sections had been evacuated or destroyed, and the enemy seemed to have unlimited resources. Engineer Sam Taylor was at his station near the chamber's main computer terminal. somehow keeping the life support and defensive systems running despite massive damage to the station's infrastructure. Sam, status on the emergency barriers? Murphy called out. Holding for now, Taylor replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. But they're trying to override the controls. Every time I block one access attempt, they try two more. The attacking forces weren't just using brute force. The conspiracy had inside knowledge of every system on the station, every weakness in their defenses. It was only human stubbornness and improvisation that was keeping them alive. A new voice came through on the comm channel, one Murphy didn't recognize. Human defenders, this is General Krextor. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now and you will be treated according to military law. Murphy keyed his comm. This is Lieutenant Colonel Murphy. We don't surrender while we have people to protect. There was a pause. Then Krextor's voice returned, carrying what might have been respect. Then you will die as warriors. I regret this necessity. Yeah, well, Murphy muttered to his team, I regret a lot of things. Doesn't mean I'm giving up. The next assault came from 3 directions at once. Enemy forces had somehow flanked their position and were attacking through maintenance corridors that should have been sealed. Murphy's team found themselves fighting in all directions while trying to protect the alien leaders behind them. Private Linda Chun, barely 20 years old and 6 months out training, held the eastern corridor with nothing but a standard rifle and determination. When her position was overrun, she used grenades to collapse the passage, sealing it off even though the explosion left her badly injured. Chen's down, reported Corporal Martinez from his position. Corridor is blocked, but she needs medical attention. Get her to the civilians, Murphy ordered. Maybe one of those alien doctors can help her. The irony wasn't lost on him. They were dying to protect beings who, until recently, most humans had never even seen. Species that had questioned human competence were now depending on human sacrifice for their survival. Dr. Track, an ethereal physician, was already treating wounded humans with supplies from his diplomatic medical kit. The tall, graceful alien worked alongside human medics, his silver hand surprisingly skilled at treating human injuries. Your people fight with great courage, Track said quietly as he worked on Chen's wounds. I did not understand this about humans before today. Most people don't, Murphy replied, checking his remaining ammunition. We don't really understand it ourselves. The chamber's main doors were starting to buckle under sustained fire. Sam Taylor had rigged additional barriers, but they wouldn't hold much longer. Murphy made a decision that went against every survival instinct. All remaining personnel, fall back to the inner chamber, he ordered. We're making our final stand around the council members themselves. Sir, Sergeant Williams protested, if we give up the outer defenses, they'll be able to bring heavy weapons to bear. They're going to do that anyway. At least this way we can protect the civilians until the very end. As his people fell back to their final positions, Murphy opened a channel to Captain Morrison. Sir, this is Murphy. We're down to 8 effectives and maybe 10 minutes of ammunition. It's been an honor serving with you. Steve, listen to me. Morrison's voice was urgent. You just need to hold for 5 more minutes. The cavalry is coming. Understood, sir. We'll do our best. Murphy didn't believe rescue was possible, but he had learned something important over the past few hours. Sometimes the job wasn't about winning or surviving. Sometimes it was just about doing what was right for as long as you could. The final assault began with explosions that shook the entire chamber. The main doors were blown inward, and armored figures poured through the breach. Murphy's team opened fire, their weapons barely slowing the attackers' advance. That's when something impossible happened. General Krextor himself appeared in the doorway, but he wasn't leading the attack. He was fighting against it, his massive form cutting down enemy soldiers with precision and fury. What in the hell? Murphy breathed. Behind Krextor came other figures, Zephyrian technicians, ethereal diplomats, even some species Murphy didn't recognize. They were all fighting alongside each other against the conspiracy forces. Human defenders. Krextor's voice boomed across the chamber. The treachery has been exposed. We stand with you. The tide of battle turned in minutes. The attacking forces, caught between human defenders and their own former allies, were quickly overwhelmed. As the last of conspirators were captured or killed, an exhausted silence fell over the council chamber. Murphy slumped against the wall, barely able to believe they had survived. Around him, his people were tending to wounds and checking on the civilians they had protected. The alien council members were slowly emerging from their hiding places, looking around at the devastation with wonder and gratitude. Speaker HFY Story approached Murphy, her elegant robes torn and stained but her dignity intact. Colonel Murphy, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our deepest gratitude for your service. Just doing our job, ma'am, Murphy replied wearily. No, the ethereal said firmly. You did far more than that. You showed us what it truly means to be guardians. General Krextor appeared beside the speaker, his armor scarred from battle. The massive Corvin looked down at Murphy with what might have been approval. Human warrior, Krextor said slowly. When I first met your people, I thought you were weak and untested. Today you have proven that strength is not measured in weapons or technology, but in the willingness to fight for others. Murphy managed a tired smile. General, if you don't mind me asking, what changed your mind about the attack? When I saw your people die and protect council members who were not even your own species, Krextor replied, I realized that the true threat to galactic civilization was not the Council's weakness, but our own corruption. The conspiracy offered power, but you offered something more valuable, honor. As rescue teams finally reached the chamber and began evacuating the wounded, Murphy looked around at what remained of his team. They had lost good people today, friends who had died far from home, but they had also accomplished something that would be remembered for generations. They had proven that humans could be trusted with the most important responsibility in the galaxy, protecting those who could not protect themselves. 6 months after the siege of Nexus Prime, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in his new office overlooking the rebuilt council chambers. The promotion had come with the territory. Humanity was now permanently responsible for galactic security, and that required someone with appropriate rank to coordinate with other species' military leaders. The view from his window showed a much different scene than before the attack. Where once there had been subtle tensions between species, now there was genuine cooperation. The conspiracy's betrayal had shocked the galactic community into recognizing how fragile their peace really was. Admiral, Captain Amy Sullivan knocked on his door frame. She had been promoted too, taking over day-to-day operations while Jake handled the political aspects of their expanded role. The ceremony is ready to begin. Jake nodded and straightened his dress uniform. Today was the signing of the Galactic Defense Charter, the document that would officially establish humanity as the protectors of the Council. It was both an honor and a burden that would define their species for generations. The ceremony took place in the main council chamber, the same room where Lieutenant Colonel Murphy and his team had made their desperate last stand. The walls still bore scars from that battle, deliberately left as a reminder of what had happened. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber. But unlike previous gatherings, this one had an atmosphere of unity that Jake had never seen before. Species that had been suspicious of each other for centuries were sitting together, bound by their shared experience of nearly losing everything. Speaker HFY Story called the assembly to order, her graceful form commanding immediate attention. Members of the Galactic Council, we gather today to formalize an arrangement that has already been proven in battle. Humanity has earned the right to serve as our protectors, not through political maneuvering or technological superiority, but through sacrifice and dedication. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jake noticed that even species that had initially opposed human involvement were nodding in approval. The charter before us today does more than assign security responsibilities. HFY Story continued. It acknowledges that protection is not just a military function, but a moral commitment. It recognizes that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to preserve. General Krextor rose from his seat among the Corvin delegation. The massive warrior looked different than he had during their first meeting. Older, perhaps, but also somehow more at peace. Speaker, if I may address the assembly, Krextor requested. Of course, General. Krextor walked to the center of the chamber, his presence commanding attention. 6 months ago, I led an attack on the station. I believed that military strength was the only protection the galaxy needed. I was wrong. He paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. Human defenders taught us something that day. They showed us that true guardians do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for others, even when those others cannot fight for themselves, even when those others are not their own kind. Jake felt a tightness in his throat as the general continued. Today, the Corvin Empire pledges its full support to human leadership of galactic security. We will serve under their command, follow their protocols, and learn from their example. Similar pledges came from representatives of other species. The Zephyrians offered their advanced technology. The Ethereals provided their wisdom and diplomatic skills. Even species that Jake had never heard of stepped forward to offer assistance. When it came time for Jake to speak, he walked to the podium feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Behind him, a holographic display showed the names of the 37 humans who had died during the siege. Their sacrifice had made this moment possible. Members of the Galactic Council, Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 6 months ago, humanity was the newest member of this assembly, struggling to find our place among species with thousands of years of civilization. Today, you honor us with a responsibility that would define our role in the galaxy. He looked out at the sea of alien faces, each representing a different world, a different culture, a different way of understanding the universe. We accept this responsibility not because we believe we are superior to other species, but because we understand what it means to protect others. Every human child learns from birth that we are stronger when we stand together, safer when we watch out for each other. Jake gestured to the scarred walls around them. The beings who died defending this chamber were not heroes by choice. They were ordinary people. A teacher from Ohio, a mechanic from Texas, a student from California. But when the moment came to choose between their own safety and the protection of others, they made the only choice their conscience would allow. He paused, thinking of Lieutenant Colonel Murphy and all the others who had paid the ultimate price. We promise to honor their memory by never forgetting that our strength comes not from our weapons or our ships, but from our commitment to each other. Human guardians will protect this council not as subjects serving masters, but as partners in a shared dream of peace. The signing of the charter was done with ceremony and precision. Each species representative added their agreement to the document, creating a treaty that would govern galactic security for centuries to come. But for Jake, the most meaningful moment came after the ceremony, when he was walking through the station's corridors and encountered young Lieutenant Maria Santos on her first shift guarding the council chambers. Santos was barely 22, a recent graduate from the Earth Defense Academy who had volunteered for a deep space assignment. She stood at her post with the same dedication that Jake had seen in every human guard since they had arrived at Nexus Prime. "Lieutenant," Jake said, approaching her station. "Admiral," Santos replied, snapping to attention. "At ease. How are you finding your assignment?" Santos relaxed slightly, though she kept her eyes alert for any threats. "It's an honor, sir, knowing that we're protecting the future of galactic civilization. It makes every day meaningful." Jake smiled. "That's good to hear. Because you're not just protecting the council members, Lieutenant. You're protecting an idea. The idea that different species can work together, that conflicts can be resolved through discussion rather than warfare, that civilization is stronger than barbarism." "Yes, sir. I understand." As Jake walked away, he reflected on how far they had all come. A year ago, most humans had never seen an alien being. Now, they were trusted with the safety of the galaxy's most important leaders. Admiral Carter had been right when she said this assignment would define humanity's place in the galactic community. But she could have foreseen how completely it would transform both humans and the species they protected. The conspiracy had intended to destroy the Galactic Council and replace it with authoritarian rule. Instead, their betrayal had created something stronger, a true alliance based on mutual trust and shared values. In his final report to Earth Command, Jake wrote, "The galaxy is not a peaceful place, and it never will be. There will always be those who choose conquest over cooperation, those who see differences as threats rather than strengths. But today, there are also guardians who stand ready to protect what matters most. the belief that all beings deserve to live in safety and dignity. He paused in his writing, looking out at the stars visible through his office window. Somewhere among those distant suns were worlds where human children were growing up knowing that their species had earned a place of honor in galactic civilization. The responsibility was overwhelming, but Jake had learned something important during the siege of Nexus Prime. Humans didn't protect others because they were asked to, or because they were ordered to, or because they expected rewards. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And in a galaxy full of wonders and dangers, that simple truth had proven to be humanity's greatest strength.